Welcome to Moving Iron with Casey Seymour and Greg Peterson, the podcast for anyone and everyone involved and interested in the business of ag equipment. If you want to understand what trends and market forces are impacting the price of your iron, you've come to the right place. Buckle up, it's time to move some iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast. This edition of the Moving Iron Podcast is brought to you by John Deere. I've got Greg Machinery Pete Peterson on to talk about what's happening in the market. Greg, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Casey. How are you doing?
Doing good, man. Doing good. It is that time of the year. Been driving across the IA here, watching a lot of field work get done, watching a lot of planters rolling. So it's that time of the year, man.
It's a fun time of year. Up here in Minnesota, I always figure that first week of May, everything just starts greening up, and yeah, the field work gets going. And it's been a little cold up here, but yeah, guys are out getting her done. Yeah.
Par for the course. You know, April is the coldest winter month in spring here in Nebraska, and it's been par for the course. We haven't had a cold winter at all, so that's very relative what I'm saying here. But April has not failed on being the cooler of the months. That's rolled through here. So.
April's always kind of a pain in the butt. I mean, it just kind of is usually.
Yeah. Yep. It's tweener. You know what I mean? You're coming out of winter, coming into spring, and all kinds of crazy things happen.
Are you guys still super dry out there? Did you get a little moisture the last month?
Yeah, this is the first week where there's rain every day in the forecast, but I'm not going to hold my breath that it actually falls from the sky. So
right.
See it to believe it. I'm the doubting Thomas on that one.
Yeah, so. We had a 61% chance last Friday from like noon to 2 here in southeast Minnesota, and I was out and about, and I was like, shoot, it's like beautiful out. There's sun. It's like, where are the clouds? I don't see anything. But I guess 61%. It's again, we're in the wrong business.
39% could be wrong though, so you got to remember that.
Well, that's true.
Got a little buffer in there, right?
Right. I should start doing that with auctions. Like, well, Machinery Pete data says there's a 61% chance this whatever is going to bring 250, but 39% says
so
never mind.
It could be something else. All right. Well, speaking of which, you saw a couple dealer auctions. Well, you saw a singular dealer auction had 3 different dealerships in it at the same time. Had some late models there. What did you see from that one, Greg?
Yeah, last Thursday, that was kind of the sale of the week. I thought, Casey. It was by Merit Auctions out of Fort Madison, Iowa. I believe it was Ag Pro, which, of course, massive footprint, great equipment up in Ohio, down Tennessee, down Georgia, and farther south. I think Goldman out of Louisiana, and then I think Alliance Equipment. I could be wrong on the third dealer, but I thought the pricing was pretty much right on par. So just a couple of examples. They had 23 model John Deere 9RX. It was a 540, 390 hours with warranty. Came in at 440, which I got to look in the last 9 of them that I've seen sold at auction have been between 422 and 487. 440 kind of in the middle there. I had a couple Fendt, 223 model 936 Varios. I think one had 717 hours, the other just over 800 or 842. And they did 268 and 266, which now I haven't seen a zillion 936s at auction. But those were the second and third highest that I've run across. The only higher was an auction I actually went down and covered December 6th in Clinton, North Carolina by Jason Aycock Auctioneering. He had a farm auction. I think there were 5 late model Fendt tractors on that auction that were just sweet, low hour warranty, beautiful. And they all sold through the roof. And the 936 on that sale went $285. But again, that was a farm sale. And again, this was a dealer auction. A couple other numbers, again, I thought were on par. They had a pair of 24 model 8R 410 Deere. Big difference in the hours. One had 600 and one had 1499. The 600 hour did 372, and the one about 1500 hours came in at 318, which when I look at the last 724 model 8R 410s that have sold at auction, if you do an average, it's just under 348.3. So to have, 372 and 318 again, I thought it was pretty much on the money.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been just like you've talked about here, we've seen stuff move through auctions. And again, they're doing one thing I want to stress on this, people are like, oh man, we've been watching these sell over here versus what the dealer consignment type sell versus a retirement estate type sell, dynamically different numbers. And it's apples and mangoes, right? They're not even close to
the same. It can be.
You know, a lot of time now depends on what it is. If you look at some stuff where if you were to go back and take a look at through a consignment sale, something that was 7 to 12 years old, kind of fall in that bucket, and then look how it looked through an estate sale, those numbers are going to be really close to each other. When you start looking at 1 to 2 to 3 year old stuff comparatively to where they sell at, there's a dynamic difference between the two.
You can get a little difference there, right? I remember 36 years ago when again, before the internet, I was starting to put out an auction price book. And so we'd have columns in the book, price and then location. I figured people need to know where this thing sold, Southeast Minnesota, West Central Nebraska, whatever. But one of the columns we included was sale type. Now, back then there was no online auction, so it was either farm auction, consignment, or dealer auction. So we'd put a F, C, or a D in there. Now, it has been interesting coming through the pandemic and the whole online thing. Generally speaking, the gaps have sort of, on good condition equipment, have flattened out a little bit. You still get the premium on the Joe Farmer's retirement or estate sale for sure. But, and from your seat that, yeah, it's just a different type of situation when you're saying, okay, well, here's 5 2-year-old 400 horse tractors on a dealer auction or a consignment. I mean, it's just different than Farmer Joe's retirement sale for sure.
For sure. Yep. Plus, at the retirement sale, you get a nice hot dog and a Coke while you're doing it.
Hot dog and a Coke. Yeah, that's that does make for a good day. I did see. Curious to your take on this, Casey, on the topic of different types of auctions. Our friends at Sexton Auctioneers out of Pomona, Missouri, had a sale. I think it was the same day, last Thursday, April 30th. I think, yeah, it was April 30th. There's a couple heavy equipment items. They had a low Howard skid steer with age on it, a 99 model Bobcat 773 it only had 291 hours on it. And Sexton said it's verified. So I don't know if the gal got sick or whatever, always shedded. So you would think, well, that'd be a premium. Now, definitely if that was a farm auction, but it brought $20,500, which now that's the 8th highest I've ever seen at auction. But if you went back into, we've talked about it a lot, but like 2022, very early 23, there were a number of older Bobcats, but skid steers back in that period were just hotter than blazes. So I think that $20,500, that was the highest I've seen at auction in 20 months on that one. But the same auction, now there's kind of a vintage Bobcat, a 99 model. Same auction had a 26 model T770 track machine skid steer with only 7 hours. And that sold for $68,500. Now, if you went back 2-3 years ago on a Bobcat T770, and again, this was a 26 model, but we'd seen them up, I think I saw one for $98,000 back in 22 when the supply chain mess was, and there was no used inventory anywhere. So again, solid price. That $68,500 was the highest in 12 months on a T770, but it just shows you timing is important. Type of sale, like you were saying, a lot of variables.
Yeah. It's funny. While you were talking about that, I was just curious what a 1999 Bobcat 773 sold for new. I thought that, you said 20 grand. I was like, that's got to be close to new.
What'd you find?
Between 20 and 25,000, depending on.
You were right.
So I had to be pretty close to that.
That's it's funny the number of times I'll post auction price on social media. It could be a tractor, it could be a combine, skid steer, something like that. And the number of times people arc back and they go, "What did that cost for new? What did that cost new?" And it is a very interesting. Then of course that brings in the inflation thing and the whole bit. But it's just interesting to find a 27-year-old skid steer with under 300 hours on it.
Yeah, especially something like that. I mean, that's funny. You look at operationally when you start looking at a skid steer in a farm operation or a feedlot operation versus a construction landscape operation type thing. Typically, the stuff coming off the farm has significantly less hours on it than a construction-based unit. But it's to see something come through that's a 1999 model. We're talking that's a 17-year-old machine. You're getting real close to like that's less than 10 hours a year on that thing. You know what I mean? So they're not quite 15 hours a year on that.
People always ask me, they'll go, what was the story on it, Pete? And it's like, a lot of times I can find out, I'll call my auctioneer friends, and they'll say, well, here's the deal. Usually it's, in the case maybe somebody was older at the time and maybe bought that as a nice little tax write-off on the way in their last couple of years, or maybe they got sick. On the hours front, a lot of times people tease me. They're like, Pete, all you ever talk about is the low-hour stuff. And it's like, well, okay. It doesn't matter to me how many hours it has. We just put the sale prices in. So we did have a sale last week in Wisconsin. Very nice auction. It was in Richland Center. I think it was last Monday, the 25th, I think. And it was by Gavin Brothers Auctioneers. It had a tractor on the sale, a 14 model Maxim 140, so for you Red fans. But it had 19,999 hours. So you're 1 hour under 20K. Gavin, they do an awesome job. They said whole life on TMR. I was like, okay, now I know. We're at 21,250 with almost 20,000 hours. Doesn't matter to me if they got 50,000 hours or 2 hours. It's just interesting to see what they all sell for. I think that was the highest hour one I ran across last week.
Yeah. I used to take a lot of, when I first started in the career, I worked for a Cat Challenger dealer down in Kansas. And we had, when I would talk to dealers from like Arizona or California, something like that, they'd have 2-year-old machines that would have 7,000 or 8,000 hours on them. And how do you get hours on them? You leave the key on or what have you? And well, they farm almost 365 days a year. And so they constantly got stuff going. And I found, in my doing that if you'd be amazed how many people would be interested in
absolutely
a 3-year-old machine that has a ton of hours on it, because they're kind of getting they're getting what they're looking for, but at a different kind of a price.
Yes. But
I also found that was the same person that would go out and buy the 25-year-old something that had 20,000 hours on it. It's like you talked about there.
Yeah.
They were. I always called those people the bargain hunters, right? If the juice squeeze, they had no fear of the hours, as long as the dollars made sense with what you had going on there. And
that's why I thought Gavin Brothers did a very nice job. Again, it's a good looking tractor. Just 20,000 hours, but they said that right in there. Whole life on a TMR. And it's like, okay, now I know. So they're pulling in those people who are, looking for a tractor like that. And, that's been the fun over the years, because this whole thing is leveled, right? We talk about it a lot, but if you flip it from the farmer side, it's like not everyone is shopping for a 500 horse tractor or a 2-year-old sprayer or whatever. Different budgets, different farm sizes, different operations. So you swirl it all up, and it's just a fascinating mix to see how it, who's selling it, why they're selling it, and who bought it, and what they paid for it.
Well, there they are, mocking you.
See you next year, loser.
That weedy area that's got you thinking, man, I hate that spot. Wish I'd sprayed better. Get the last laugh with a sprayer upgrade from John Deere. Precision upgrades that can increase your sprayer's performance, like ExactApply, advanced nozzles to give you more control at more speeds. It's just one of the many precision upgrades you'll find at johndeere.com. Now, let's see who's laughing.
Looking for more accuracy, more productivity from your current planter? Let's get exact with precision upgrades from John Deere. Start with ExactEmerge and get accurate singulation and spacing at 10 miles per hour. Or choose ExactShot to promote early root growth and cut fertilizer costs. And with FurrowVision, save time by verifying seed depth right from your cab. Visit johndeere.com/planner upgrades and see why nothing runs like a Deere.
Yeah. I had a guy one time about a brand new, I don't remember what the model was, but I want to say it was like a 50 or 75 horsepower tractor, something like that. And, but same kind of deal. He put it on his grain auger. He was going to mow with it a little bit, but, primary was he hooked it up to the grain auger, never took it off. And 12 years later, brought it back in, and I had, way more hours on it than anything that around it. I had that kind of stuff on it. But he goes, it literally has never moved past, I rolled it off when you guys delivered it. I went and hooked it up.
Right.
And I put it on a trailer to bring it in. And that's all the further the transmission's been moved, other than the PTO.
Yeah, it's on the auction side, or if you're selling privately. Well, I'm sure it applies on the dealer side too. If you took that in on trade, you would definitely represent, okay, well, yeah, it's got higher hours, but here's the deal. This came off this Jones's farm and whatever. But seeing it, in action on the auger or whatever, seeing that setup or hearing the seller or the farmer say, I mean, we took delivery of this thing and it hasn't moved. It's just, and then everyone goes, oh, okay, got it. You're filling in the blanks. And I like that, whether it's a dealer that does that or an auction company or a private seller.
So here's one I want to bounce off of you. I was thinking about this the other day when I was driving it. So you got, the hard and fast truth of the world is, you look at a combine, you have engine hours, separator hours, but separator hours are really the ones that matter, right? That's that time it's been out working, those kind of things. And, there's other machines out there that have two meters, you got, like sprayer is the one I was thinking about. So you got engine hours and then you've got spray hours.
Yeah.
And I've often wondered as technology starts to come into play, you start looking at upgrade kits and how they play into that. When does the secondary meter on the spray meter hours on a sprayer, like what point in the future will that start making a big difference in the value of a sprayer? Because right now, most sprayers you look at them, they might have 1,000 hours on them, but they've got 150 spray hours on of those 1,000 hours. The rest of that time,
load time or whatever,
load time and refill time and this, that, and the other. So there's a big chunk of that out there, but at what point does that start playing?
It's a great, it's interesting. Gosh, you'd think the manufacturers on the sprayer front specifically would have come out with, built that in so that you can quickly identify the number of spray hours. I'm really intrigued a number of years ago as these apps, these phone apps with data and all your machinery come out. And I can't rattle off their names off the top of my head. There's some really good ones. But the thing that I was interested in a couple of years ago was that you could kind of see like, okay, you're basically documenting every machine and how it's used over, now your breadcrumb trail is years long. You look back. So on a sprayer, yeah, if you have data that internally from your own app or whatever that says management software, well, only X number of spray hours. Wow. That could, talk about potential difference in value. You would think future sellers or those who are going to trade in, document it yourself, whatever. I'm starting to see a little bit on auctions where different types of equipment will in their own way kind of try to do what you just brought up. It could be sprayers or it could be other things, or I'll see a grain cart and it'll say used X number of hours. And I'll go, never seen that before, but that's really smart. You say, well, we've got this 7-year-old Brent, whatever. And visually you can look at it and go, oh, okay, well, this one looks like new. So there's that. You could post a lot of pictures. And by the way, on that front, I do want to do a shout out to our friends at the Steffes Group. I was looking at one of their upcoming sales. I think it was May 7th, really nice farm sale. They had 242 pictures of one item.
Wow.
And I was like, that is a hell of a lot of work and super smart. So it's a little off topic, but it's a little not. So, but if you can, document how many hours you use your grain cart or your spray hours, that's super valuable bit of information for sure. So you're right to be wondering about that. And again, it makes me think of another fun auction. This was like 3 years ago, Casey. It was coming out of the pandemic supply chain mess, but we went up to Northwest Minnesota, up in the Red River Valley. It was two brothers retiring, great guys. The last name was Ramstad. You want to have fun, folks, go watch the Machinery Pete YouTube preview video of the Ramstad auction in Minnesota, because when we got to their grain carts, you could see that one of the brothers had taken a grease pen. And every time it went out, it was noted. And the list was like, it was handwritten. And then we got to their air drill and it was the same thing. It's super neat handwriting. And how do you think everything sold on that sale?
I would imagine pretty well.
Through the roof. Because yes, you're buying the grain cart or the sprayer or the planter, but you're buying the Ramstad brothers, really, I thought. And so is it OCD? Yes, no doubt. In fact, the other brother, he said, he was laughing. He goes, well, one of them was Glenn. I can't remember the other brother's name. I apologize. But he was like, well, Glenn writes it on the piece. He goes, then we keep a book back in the shop. We handwrite everything there. So they have like dual. And I was like, well, why? Okay, I get you have the record in the shop. Why do you want to have it on the grain cart? And it was a good answer. He said, well, I might not have my book with me at the time. And it's like, okay, God bless you. That's fantastic.
Yep. What are they writing down, like when they grease something, or like what were they keeping track of?
Yeah, they would just, so on the grain cart, I could go look at the picture. Again, the thing was this long on the side of the cart. So I think it wasn't that old of a cart, but I think they just were like, okay, we were rolling October, 12th, 2023, whatever. And then, whenever they grease it or whatever, yeah, they'd make a notation. But just so detailed in their approach. And you could tell they did it their whole career. These guys are retiring now. And we got to their tractor line. Folks, the viewers, which you're absorbing that and hearing the two brothers talk about it. I think they had an 8850. I think it was repowered. I don't know if it was Kinsey repower. But the thing, it sold for it blew away any auction price I'd ever seen on any 8850. And of course, the repower adds a lot of value, but it still blew way past that. The only sad part there is 2 weeks later, I got a call from one of the great folks at Steffes, and they're like, "Oh, Pete, we just want to let you know that the buyer flaked out on that one," which, online auctions, unfortunately, sometimes that happens. Yeah, the interest in their equipment was just off the charts because of the care that it received. But they were doing what you were wondering about on sprayers. Like, how many sprayer hours does this thing have? That was at the heart of what they were documenting. So when it did come time to trade or sell, it wasn't just like, look how nice this is. It's like, that's not, you can do better. Give me more data. Give me more info.
Yeah, because we'd sell a lot of, over my career, we'd sell, a guy put a dry box on the sprayer, right? A dry box spreader on the sprayer chassis.
Sure.
And we'd have this wet unit sitting in the back and forget which one it came off of. Next thing you know, you don't know. And that wet unit only has 250 spray hours on it. It's on it's a 10-year-old unit or something like that, whatever. But just documenting that stuff and write it down. I've always told guys, we'd get trade-ins that would come in, like, you got to remember this is from ABC Farms and there's premium stuff. That's great. That's awesome. You have to document why it's premium stuff. And that's the part that gets you that extra juice when you get into it.
Yeah, if we can move, the more we can move away from anecdotal, and my dad, when I was a kid growing up, it was the same thing. I'd be out on the lot taking inventory and stuff. These used pieces, and you'd say ABC. You go, oh, this came from ABC Farms, and everyone local, had a pretty good feel for ABC Farms. Man, these guys are great, and you get that ABC Farms premium. But now, of course, the world has shifted from when I grew up. So now you're marketing your used equipment, worldwide. You've traveled the world selling equipment and making connections and stuff. So, not that every piece is in that condition, but whether it's low spray hours on a sprayer or it came off a certain farm, like I always used to wonder why, and I understand why as a dealer you wouldn't say in your listing, you'd say, this is from ABC Farms. I always thought dealers should say that. And I understand farmers, particularly in the Midwest where we've grown up, are private people, and you don't hey, I traded this in, don't bring my name into it. But I think there's a subtle play there, and we talk about it a lot, where you can honor your current customer and as a dealer or an auction company say, wow, I'm telling you what, folks, this is as nice as I've seen. So auctioneers, they'll do that. You can't blow smoke. People figure you out. If you do that every time, they'll go, wow, he's just saying that every single time. You lose their interest. But when you pull forward the highest quality when it's real, that's a powerful, powerful thing. And just figuring out ways to do it. So what you talked about with spray hours, super smart. I would think manufacturers should be listening and going, or any of their equipment, just help us document how many hours we use this thing.
Yeah.
It's the world we live in now. It's all data.
Yep. Very much. Makes a big difference. I used to like doing this. Guy would call in and say, hey, what can you tell me about this machine? I'm like, here you go, everything you have. And I go, hey, if you're interested, I talked to a guy that traded in, and he's more than happy to talk to you about it if you want to talk to him. And
See, there you as a dealer, and I know you, Casey, so you built good relationships with your customers. So then you could play into that, and they would, oh, sure, hey, have them call Casey. That's the right way to do business right there.
My approach to that all the time was my relationship with the customer needed to be really good, because it came down to this: the faster I can sell you a piece of equipment, the faster I want to sell you a new one, right? And the more likely I want to go out and sell you that machine too, because don't get me wrong, there's guys that you can take the stuff, sit on the lot, and it's going to sell pretty quick. You got some stuff that's going to sell okay. Then the guys that you take, and you take it in on trade, it's just going to take a while to sell it. And it's just, but your pricing reflects that. And so the better relationship you can have with the customer about, hey, here's the stuff we can do. Let's help you type of thing. Let's push this thing through. It gives you better trade values, everything else that are there. It tells a better story about the machine and gets you rolling. Now, I've had stuff that came back and the guy told me stuff about that I didn't know, that from the guy, and he was like, well, the guy told me this, like, oh wow, I didn't know that. And
you just get them talking.
But it worked out good though, because it built a level of trust.
Right. I would always, back if we hop back to the auction end, people would call me up over the years and would say, hey, Pete, I'm looking at this whatever on this auction coming up. What do you think? And from a data side, I can say, okay, Bob, here's the comparables, like we were doing on that 8R 410. It's like, well, 422 to 487 based on this or that. But one of the things I always suggested was, absolutely just call and just get the owner, seller just talking. And, hey, if they're from Iowa, it's like, well, you're a Hawkeye or Cyclone fan? Oh, those Hawkeyes, man, the Hawkeyes are having a good year. You get talking. Okay. The more you talk, once you get past the 10, 15 minute mark, I always thought that there becomes kind of you get those little comments like you were referencing. It's like, I didn't know that. But, when you call a seller like that, I would just tell people, listen to your gut on the conversation, So then it's occurred to me with listings, because again, our site, machinerypete.com, how many listings we got? Like 100, I don't know, it's 110,000, 20? I lose track, but.
Right around there.
Yeah. And thanks for what you do to drive our website on this front to keep getting better. But I always thought dealers, I'd be like, God, I wonder, why don't you just hire a 22-year-old kid with a drone that has a good personality that can relate to people, and just say, here's our 20 favorite customers, our best customers. And you go out in the spring and the fall and just, work with them on their schedule, get some drone video of them harvesting and planting. And when I first started saying that 10 years ago, people were like, why would you do that? And it's like, because when they trade that into you, again, locally, they know ABC Farms has a premium. But if you can interject and say, here is that Gleaner R72 or S97 on a beautiful day in Scottsbluff, Nebraska in October of 23, you're presenting that as a dealer or an auctioneer. And the people you're presenting it to are going to go, whoa, you just made this listing three-dimensional. And then if you have a little word from the guy, talking about the history of care, and I work with KCC Moore over here, and now you're personalizing the listing. It's the asset. It's a sprayer. It's got X number of hours. But what else can you fill in for me visually or anecdotally? And as a seller, an auction company, or a dealer, it's like I'm starting to see auction companies get really creative on this front. And it's good business. And I'm sure dealers are doing it too. I don't look on that front as often as I do daily, but I'm all for any innovation there to, storytell about where this piece of equipment came from, because if you do that, it just is worth more money.
Yep, for sure. For sure. Tell your story, man. It always comes out in the end. Greg. Good place
story, right.
Good place to stop, Greg. Folks want to reach out to you, get you to come to their auction, or have something they want to tell you, go to social media sites or check us out over at machinerypete.com.
Yep. Social media, or drop a note, machinerypete.com, right. And getting ready for summer here. We do have one auction we're filming for our TV show, July 9th. in Penfield, Illinois. It's day one of the 4-day historic Farm Day show. One of our auctioneer friends, Alex Kerr, he's having a historic tractor auction. So if you have a historic vintage piece of equipment and you've been thinking of selling it, check out kerrauction.com. I think Alex is looking for some consignments. He texted me a couple items today. That's going to be quite an event. We'll be there filming it for the TV show. But yeah, just reach out, folks, and happy to visit always.
Well, Greg, appreciate you being on the show. We'll catch you again next week.
Sounds great, Casey. Have a good one.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week. And remember, Moving Iron is available on Farm Journal's YouTube channel and anywhere podcasts are found. So until next time, let's move some iron.